Welcome back to another episode of George Manz Coins on YouTube. With George, as always, I'm Terry Massey. Thank you for joining us and subscribing, sending us questions, comments, anything else that might make this podcast better. We'd love to hear from you guys. Please do drop me in the comments, send us a tweet to @GeorgeManzCoins, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. So the first thing I noticed when we set up for this episode, George, was Imperial Bank of Canada, predecessor of the CIBC as we know it today, or
one of the predecessors.
Okay, so what is the story?
Okay, so in 1873, 6 years after Canada became a country, a bunch of people got together in Toronto and started the Imperial Bank of Canada. And it had a small number of branches in Ontario. In 1886, it had its first branch in Alberta, in Calgary, and 5 years later, in 1891, they opened up a branch in Edmonton. In 1931, the Imperial Bank of Canada absorbed the Weyburn Security Bank and took over its operations, and then it had a whole bunch of branches in southern Saskatchewan. Anyways, the bank lasted up until 1961, when the Imperial Bank of Canada and the Canadian Bank of Commerce became CIBC, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. So the imperial part is the I in that name. Anyways, in 1917, the German government and military decided that a good way to help defeat the Allies would be by counterfeiting money. These are Canadian $100 notes from the Imperial Bank of Canada, and they used their own printing presses, and they are fairly well done. And they issued them in the hopes that it would bankrupt the economy of Canada, and specifically this bank.
How successful were they?
Obviously, a lot of them got passed in what is now Iran. So all the ones that I have got a stamp from a Persian stamp from a bank that accepted all these notes.
So they would circulate them. They didn't circulate them in Canada.
Well, some of them did.
Some got to Canada,
Yeah.
but they would start them in foreign countries, hoping to send them over.
Send them back here, and
so basically, take them in, exchange them, for whatever,
and then how many cents does it cost to make one of these things?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
They look pretty good. Like they look. Obviously, we can tell with the glaring counterfeit stamp that it's on them, but they look very close to. They for me, for that era, I wouldn't know what the difference between the two, but it makes sense of what they're trying to accomplish with this.
Right. And they're not expensive, so they're an interesting note, and for like 100 and a little bit, about $100.
You can own your own counterfeit money that looks
face value.
Yeah, no,
100 years later.
100 years later. Anything else we should know about them?
No, I just find it an interesting thing.
One of the rarities and oddities, which there seem to be quite a few of those idiosyncrasies in the numismatics world. Okay, perfect. Thanks for bringing this to us today, George. Another interesting episode.
Thank you.